Maude, my moredoor Mk2 Escort. Getting quite a bit of TLC. All right, so here it is then, people. Keep my fingers crossed, let's see what happens. Oh, it's not working. Right, well, I'm an idiot. Why can't I be a normal YouTuber and hide all the idiocy? Went over to Esther's garage, stole her cord. Get her on the road and see what's what. Don't want to chuck the car about too much. Definitely trying to die. Yeah, just got to hope it will start so we can actually get it back home. Whee! Hello and welcome to this video. I'm Marcus Hayes, and today you join me round at the garage here at home with Maude, my moredoor Mk2 Escort. Now, if you've been watching my recent videos, you'll know that this thing's going to be getting quite a bit of TLC over the next few weeks as I try and get her ready for a drift day at the end of the month. Now, when she broke down recently on the way to a breakfast meet that I didn't end up getting to, I noticed that oil was getting into where number 4 spark plug is, which it now isn't, thanks to a brand new rocker cover gasket. But I think that the poor running issues that I was getting, that I thought might have been caused by that oil, might actually be being caused by something else. Now, in my opinion, and in a lot of your opinions, this is probably being caused by a dodgy coil pack, or it might actually be fuel pump issues again. Now, it's fair to say that I've had quite a few problems with the fuel pump on this car ever since I switched to the bike carbs. So let's just recap a little bit. Now, when this car had a 2-litre blacktop Z-Tech with a twin choke Weber, I had a very cheap facet fuel pump in the boot, and I had a Maude fuel pressure regulator mounted here on the inner wing. And that works perfectly with the twin choke Weber setup. With the Maude fuel pressure regulator, you're able to turn the fuel pressure up and down to suit whatever carburetor setup you've got. The problem I found when I fitted the bike carbs is that even when I turned the fuel pressure down to its lowest, the fuel would still leak out of certain orifices of the bike carbs. Now, if I remember rightly, it was leaking out of where these T-pieces are. Now, on those T-pieces are rubber O-rings, and I replaced all the rubber O-rings on these, and also there's similar T-pieces on this breather bit, which I think some people mistake for a return to the tank when it's not. So yeah, it was either leaking, I think it was leaking out of here, but the fuel was also coming out of this breather thing, which basically means that your fuel pressure is too high. And as I say, that was even when I had the Maude fuel pressure regulator turned right down. So then I started trying bike fuel pumps, and there's loads of really cheap ones available on eBay. Tried a couple of them and they just stopped working after a while, and more recently I switched to one from a more reputable company, which seems to be fine. You know, I'm not sure if the fuel pump is what's causing the issue I had the other day with the car, but there's one thing that I've definitely noticed, and it's only when you go from like a standstill all the way through the gears, you know, all the way to the rev limiter, when you get to the top of 4th, it just seems like, you know, it misfires, like it's starving of fuel, and then you can back off the throttle for literally half a second and then it's fine again. So what I'm thinking is that on those situations, the fuel bowls are getting a little bit dry. Now, it's worth noting that these bike fuel pumps aren't really designed to push the fuel all the way from, you know, the back of the car to the front of the car, because they're designed to be on a motorbike, and they're definitely not designed to suck the fuel, so you can't put them, you know, further up here either. Now, I've had another fuel pump set up in my garage that used to be fitted to Esther, my Mk2 Escort, when she was running a Pinto engine on twin 45 Webers. All right, so here it is then, people. Got this facet fuel pump mounted on this really nice bracket, and the Maude fuel pressure regulator, which isn't mounted, I've just got a screw in there holding it in position. So yeah, basically I'm just going to ghetto rig this up temporarily, turn the fuel pump on and just see if fuel does leak out of the bike carbs like it did with the other one. All Right, so here is my arrangement. I've poured the fuel into a smaller bottle and I've got this pipe going into there, and that goes into the inside of the facet fuel pump, and then the outside is connected into the fuel pressure regulator. Don't actually have a Jubilee clip on that joint, hopefully it won't leak. And then I've got a pipe coming out of the fuel pressure regulator, and that goes into the fuel pipe that leads to the carbs. I've actually put my fuel pressure gauge onto the regulator. I've got the earth wire attached to this wire, and that is attached to the body. I've disconnected the earth from the body from the bike pump wiring, and I've actually got the electrics on the car on and the fuel pump switch on. And the reason I've done it that way is so that I can just literally tap this red wire, which is hooked up to the positive on this fuel pump. Yeah, I can just tap that onto this chocolate block thing, which is the wiring for the bike pump. But as I say, I've disconnected the earth from it. So in theory, if I touch this on here, the facet pump should pump. Nope, it is not working. I'll tell you why it's not working, because for some reason on this facet fuel pump they've used a black wire for the positive and a red wire for the negative. So we'll switch these two around and then it'll work, if I haven't damaged the pump already by having it wired up wrong. Right, take two. There we go. I'm just going to take the cap off of this adjustment bit. Right, it's already loose. So yeah, to adjust this you've got a cap here. Once that's off, you've got a threaded piece which has got a slit in it so you can screw it with a screwdriver, and then a locking nut. And yeah, basically, however much this threaded bit is twisted in or out determines the pressure. Now, if I remember rightly, out is low pressure, and yeah, I set it before so that it was literally barely hacked, because there's a spring under there. Don't want it to ping out, you know, so that is literally not biting at all. So I literally screwed it on, you know, like one turn or something, just so that it's got some thread on it, then locked it off, and yeah, it still leaked out of the bike carbs. I think what I'll do now is pump it and then just turn the threaded bit and see if we can get any pressure on the gauge. Right, well, I'm an idiot, and I know loads of you would have clocked this mistake. Why can't I be a normal YouTuber and hide all the idiocy and mistakes? So as it turns out, this top end of the fuel pump isn't the in, it's the out. It actually clearly says out there. Now, in my defence, the reason I assumed it was the in is because it's got this bit of plastic on this pipe, which is the same as the plastic pipe that runs from the standard tank all the way down to the engine bay. But when I had this set up in Esther, I just had that plastic bit coming out of the stock fuel tank when she had a stock fuel tank. That went into the boot, and then after the fuel pump and regulator set up, which was in the boot, the rest of the car was Teflon lined fuel hose. Yeah, when I saw that plastic bit in there, I just assumed, without even looking, that this was supposed to be the feed from the tank. In the same way that I assumed that the red wire was the positive. Anyway, all I need to do is swap these pipes over, because I think this long pipe is better for, you know, putting inside the bottle, and then we'll see where we're at. Right, I think I might actually be getting somewhere now. I've just adjusted the fuel pressure regulator down to the lowest that it can be. So yeah, that's less than 1.5 psi. Yeah, I'd say that's about 2 psi. But the really good thing, there doesn't seem to be any fuel coming out of here, which was the issue I had with the other facet fuel pump. Let's see how well she'll run. See if we get the same issue we were getting the other day. Well, I've certainly seen enough to persuade me to actually go ahead and fit this facet fuel pump and Maude fuel pressure regulator to this car. Going to mount it properly inside the boot on that nice little bracket. Still not completely convinced that my issues from before were the fuel pump, because, you know, that issue was an intermittent fault, so it might just be that it's not occurring at the moment. Anyway, I'm going to get myself some new fuel hose and some new Jubilee clips, and I'm going to come back around here either tomorrow or the next day to get this fuel pump properly installed. Hello, so as you've just seen, I've now got the Facet fuel pump set up, fully installed into Maude's boot, and that was actually done yesterday. And then once I'd fitted the fuel pump and that, I took her for a quick spin, and as it turned out, after driving a few miles, the same issues were still there. But yesterday evening, I went and grabbed a couple of bits off of Esther, my Mk2 Escort, and I want to do a bit of trial and error today to see if I can figure out what is causing these issues. Now today, I have already hooked up the ME100 ECU to my laptop and loaded up the Mighty software because I wanted to see if the issue is being caused by the crank sensor. Just fire it up and show you what I mean. With the electrics turned on, we'll just connect the ECU. It goes green, so it's connected. We'll go to the diagnostics tab over here. Now you'll see here that it says not synced, and when you crank, if it doesn't get sync, which basically means that the cam and crank sensor are communicating with each other, it won't start. Now the engine was just showing the symptoms where, you know, it was trying to die unless you turn the revs up stupidly high. See, if I push the button and get you to look at the screen, you'll see what happens. Look where it says not synced. You'll see there that it said full, which means it's got full sync. And this counter here actually shows the lost sync count. You know, you can get that to go to 1 or 2 whilst it's trying to get sync. So yeah, that tells me that it got sync absolutely fine straight away. If I take my foot off the accelerator, you know, it's idling at the moment, but in a second it'll die. Probably won't now, I'm trying to show you, but it is an intermittent fault anyway. Anyway, I'll give you a closer look at the new fuel pump setup, and then we'll start trying to change parts to see if we can solve this running issue. So here it is, we've got the Facet fuel pump and the Maude fuel pressure regulator mounted on this really nice alloy bracket. I did actually plan to use my riv nut kit to, you know, put some riv nuts in here so that I could just bolt the bracket in. But unfortunately in my riv nut kit I didn't have the mandrel for the M6 bolts. The smallest one I had was M5 and I don't have any M5 bolts, and I didn't really want to use M4 bolts to bolt this bracket in. So I resorted to using pop rivets. Just means if I ever have to remove it, I'll have to drill the pop rivets out, but not a massive deal at all. In terms of the plumbing, I was actually able to use holes that were already drilled in the boot floor when I had the different type Facet fuel pump set up, which was mounted over here. I've got the hardline pipe coming out of the tank, which is attached to this rubber hose, which goes through this hole into the fuel pump, and then rubber hose coming out of the fuel pump into the fuel pressure regulator, another rubber hose coming out of the fuel pressure regulator, and that joins up to the hardline fuel hose here, which goes all the way to the engine bay. And I've just put a little bit of rubber hose in the hole here, basically using it like a grommet to stop this hardline getting damaged from vibration. You know, don't want it to chafe or anything. So yeah, that's the fuel pump setup, all hooked up, nothing's leaking, it's working absolutely fine. I think I've got the pressure set to around 2 psi at the moment. I've got absolutely no leaks coming from, you know, anywhere on the carbs. And yeah, I just want to do a test once I actually get on the road to see if that issue I had before, where if you proper bomb it, once you get to the top of fourth, it did seem to misfire. So yeah, with this, I can literally just turn the fuel up slightly if I get that issue. But yeah, we'll just have to see. One thing I did forget to do is to add an inline fuel filter here. But yeah, I can do that whenever. That's not a major issue. You can actually hear the fuel pump enough to know that it's on, but it is really, really quiet. So yeah, really, really happy. So yesterday I went over to Esther's garage and I stole her coil pack. her HT leads and her spark plugs. Now, I want to change these parts one at a time because I want to find out what exact part on Maude is broken, so I know to throw that part away, and yeah, I'll know that the other parts are okay. So I think I'm going to start with the coil pack, which is what I think is causing the issues I'm having at the moment. So I'll just temporarily rig this up, and then we'll take Maude on the road. I'll take the HT leads, the spark plugs, and some tools with me so that we can switch those bits out while we're on the road if we need to. I'm not going to remove the coil pack from where it is underneath the inlet. I'm just going to unplug it and plug in this one. Pull these HT leads up to the top of the engine. We'll just plug them into Esther's coil pack. I think that'll be all right there. It's only going around the block. Let's get her on the road and see what's what. So far, so good. I hope I'm not counting my chickens. But yeah, I have noticed a bit of an issue with the VVT. At lower revs, it seems like it's not meeting the target of cam advance. But yeah, it seems all right further up the rev range. Right now, the target is 40.25 and it's hitting 40.0. So yeah, maybe VVT sensor or solenoid is on its way out, I don't know. Another thing I noticed yesterday when I took it for a drive is the brakes definitely need a better bleed, and also the rear shocks are way too stiff. Some sort of Golf behind, giving it on his launch control rev limiter by the sounds of it. Don't want to chuck the car about too much because the coil pack's now leaning on the master cylinder. Yeah, revs are going down slightly at idle, so maybe the coil pack wasn't the issue. Yeah, now I've stopped, it's definitely trying to die. I'm actually leaning towards thinking it might be something to do with the carbs. Maybe the idle jets are blocked, and that's why it seems to be all right if I turn the revs right up, because then you're on the main circuit. But I may as well complete this test and switch out the HT leads next. Yeah, one thing I didn't do that one of you guys suggested was to thoroughly clean this one, because obviously it's got oil on it from when we had the issue before. I could just change that one and see how we get on. Yeah, it's definitely got oil on there, and probably some in there as well. Still no oil getting in there from the rocker cover gasket though, which is good. Alright, so normally when this car cuts out or I switch it off while it's warm, it really struggles to restart. So we'll probably get an answer straight away whether this has improved things or not. No change. Let's change the other three. Here we go. Yeah, this is literally as bad as it gets. This is exactly what was happening before. Right. Let's bung in the other spark plugs. Yeah. Mk2, yeah. Hello, mate, you all right? All right, so just chatting to a bloke that lives down the road from me. I think his name's Mac. Shout out to you if you're watching. absolutely useless at remembering people's names, so sorry if I've got it wrong. But yeah, because it's been sitting a while, chances are this might fire up all right, and then we'll have to take it for a drive to see if it's gonna start doing the misfiring again. Let's see. Yeah, problem's still there. Just gotta hope it'll start so we can actually get it back home. Whee! That's gotta be head gasket, surely. It's official. Head gasket failure. Oh dear. Right, so I've got my answer as to what has been going on with these weird running issues. Got mayo on the oil cap now, so yeah, 100% sure that the head gasket has gone, even though when I checked the cap before, there wasn't any mayo on the cap then. When I done a compression test that day, it didn't, you know, show that any of the cylinders were down. But from what I've read online and stuff, the thing with head gasket issues is that sometimes they can show none of the symptoms. You know, unless you can do a leak down test or a sniff test, which I don't have the equipment to do, you're never going to be 100% sure that you haven't blown the head gasket. But I'm definitely sure that I have now. So this is another setback in terms of getting Maude ready for this drift date at the end of the month, but still got a few weeks. So yeah, I'm still confident that we're going to make it. I've already been in touch with KEMBER at CLUMPFAB, who is going to be stripping Maude's head down and giving it a skim just to make sure that it's flat when we put it back on the engine with a brand new head gasket. And while he's at it, he'll relap the valves in for me and replace the valve stem seals. So yeah, Maude's going to get a reconditioned cylinder head from KEMBER at CLUMPFAB, and hopefully when we put her back together, she'll be running better than she ever has. On the bright side, I can now safely say that the coil pack, HT leads and spark plugs are all fine because it didn't make any difference when I fitted Esther's ones. So yeah, there's some parts I don't need to throw away and replace, I suppose. But yeah, I'm not going to get depressed about this situation. You know, these things happen, and you know, I only recently changed the cylinder head on Esther, so this will be fresh in my mind, and yeah, the little errors that I made when I've done Esther's, hopefully I won't make when I do Maude's. Anyway, that is it for this video. I think in the next video, I'm either going to be tearing into ripping Maude's head off or cracking on with some of the other bits that I was planning to do next. But if you thought this video was any good, please do give it a thumbs up and a share. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Click subscribe if you're new to keep up to date with all my future uploads, and check the links in the description to my social media, my own website. I'll leave a link to my Patreon down there for any of you guys that want to support me in that way. Massive, massive thanks to all my patrons. I really, really appreciate your ongoing support. I'll leave my email address in the description for anyone who wants to contact me. But other than that, until next time, thanks for watching.